Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Russian President Vladimir Putin has unveiled a new long-range nuclear missile, a weapon so advanced and concerning, experts are calling it a tiny flying Chernobyl. It's nuclear-powered, virtually undetectable and capable of evading global defenses. Is a new arms race beginning? To help us understand the significance and threat of the Burevestnik, we are joined by Reuben F. Johnson, Director of the Asia Research Center at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a tricky name.
Burevestnik.
Burevestnik, there you go. You're going to have to help me out.
It actually means storm petrel. It's kind of a, bird on the ocean.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Thank you. So Russia claims its Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile can bypass all air defenses from a military standpoint. Is such a claim realistic?
Well, okay.
There's no independent evidence for it.
I've written a lot about this system, probably more than we have time to talk about here. But the unique aspect of this particular weapon is that it has an onboard, supposedly, has an onboard nuclear-powered engine, which means, like most missiles, it is not limited by the amount of fuel it can carry. It can supposedly fly forever and ever and ever and ever. We've seen very little evidence that this is the case. I mean, the previous tests have killed some people, and previous other tests have been very, very short range. But this last particular test, there was a claim, supposedly, that Gerasimov came to Putin, the chief of the general staff, and told him that this thing had flown something like 14,000 miles. And I've not seen anyone verify that yet. The reason for the name Flying Chernobyl, and I would like to take credit for popularizing this.
Oh, really?
Because when this was first unveiled in 2018, Putin gave a State of the Nation address to a joint session of the Russian parliament. He does this every year, and he decided to celebrate his 18th year in office by introducing a panoply of 6 different doomsday weapons. They were all nuclear weapons of one kind or another, and this was one of them. And during the presentation, he spoke and he said that this Burevestnik had already flown, it had already been tested, people were applauding. So immediately thereafter, the exiled oligarch and one-time visitor at the Gulag, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who's now in exile in London, he released a video saying, gee, do these people know what they're clapping and applauding? That if this thing has already flown, that means that Chernobyl's been flying over their heads, because wherever this thing, if it crash lands somewhere, that land's contaminated, it's gone, wherever that might be. And he went on to say that the manner in which Putin was talking about these nuclear weapons and the way he's speaking about them, he says this is a very, very disturbing mindset to be seen in the head of the man who's the red button is right on his desk, as they say. So yeah, it's pure madness as far as anyone else is concerned.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a soundbite from Donald Trump, because he doesn't sound too happy about this.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shore. So I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles, and they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
So inappropriate, that's what we hear from Trump. How significant is this test that we hear of in terms of Russia's strategic deterrence posture? Is this a genuine game changer, or is this mainly a show of force?
This is a show, but it has, I would say, rather serious consequences. I mean, one of the commentaries I read in Russian immediately after the test was announced was one Russian saying, well, basically, what is the matter with Putin? Does he want the American sub that's out there to move even closer? Is that what he really wants? And the other consequence is that, and this is not just from this test, but it's from what we're seeing with this war, what we're seeing with the way we've sort of been very hesitant to do anything against North Korea in the kinetic sphere and so on. The lesson that countries are learning is that, oh, if you have nuclear weapons, then you have a deterrent and no one will bother you. And there are various estimates now, but the latest one is that there are 40 countries in this world now who have a nuclear program of one kind or another, and perhaps they've stopped and they're just waiting, perhaps they're still in development, but they are all of them within about 2 years of having a nuclear device. This is no longer some esoteric pie-in-the-sky technology that only 1 or 2 or 4 countries can master. It's actually, particularly now with AI capabilities, it's not that hard to design a nuclear weapon, and everyone's taking the lesson. Well, yeah, that's what you really need if you want to be safe.
But this doesn't happen overnight. This has been happening for years. And in terms of this Burevestnik, the tests have been happening for, I don't want to lie or make a mistake here, but this has been happening for many decades, actually, the planning and the tests.
Well, some of this, there's another aspect of this program you have to understand. This program is not primarily run by, nor does the funding for it primarily go to the Russian Ministry of Defense. It goes to Rosatom, the Russian atomic energy company. And the person who used to run Rosatom and who still sits on the board is Sergei Kiriyenko. And Kiriyenko, you probably remember, he became famous when he was a prime minister along with Boris Nemtsov under Yeltsin, and he was the youngest prime minister ever. And we called him Kinder Surprise, because he was so young, and also because he was a rather smallish man. But anyway, now he's running the presidential administration in Moscow under Vladimir Putin. He's one of Vladimir Putin's right-hand people. And the money that's coming into Rosatom for this program is absolutely staggering. And it's like all other Russian major weapons procurement programs. It's a fabulous way to steal money. So this to me, I have no inside, I don't talk to the National Security Agency or people like that. But this has all the earmarks of something where people keep coming to the Tsar and saying, oh, everything's going just fine, just send more money. And that it's a money laundering machine as much as it is a weapons development program.
And in terms of the technology, I mean, we hear Jeffrey Lewis from the Middlebury Institute describe the Burevestnik as a small airplane powered by a nuclear reactor. Just to give our viewers a bit of more detail and context, how dangerous is this technology in terms of the impact it might have for the environment and Russia itself?
It's potentially catastrophic, because it's just like Mr. Khodorkovsky said 7 years ago. He said, if you have a test and this thing crashes into whether it's a city or the sea, wherever it is, that's nuclear contamination. And
in terms of what the West has in response to this catastrophe, what do we have? I mean, there has been knowledge of this nuclear weapon in development for decades. So what does the West have in terms of its response?
Well, I'm not aware of any analogous system that we have. I mean, we do have in the West rather capable anti-missile defensive systems. And we're talking about the range of some of these new age missile defense systems that can possibly operate and take out an object, thousands of miles away instead of hundreds. So that's where we have chosen to place, I mean, not just systems like the Patriot, which use missiles to intercept an oncoming missile, but we're looking at things like lasers and directed energy weapons as well.
And in terms of this information emerging now, why now? Is this a result of the failed Budapest summit?
Putin is, by all objective assessments, looking at what's happening, particularly with the latest sanctions and other developments in Russia, Putin is beginning to feel that he's in serious trouble. I just wrote an article about this yesterday, and it quoted the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who he says, Putin is running out of troops, money, and ideas, that there's no way they can win on the battlefield now. They don't have the resources to move forward. And everyone talks about the Russian economy being in a state where they're very close to industrial collapse.
But there's money for this.
Well, there's money for this. They'll always find money for these little pet projects, yes. But that's nothing compared to what it costs to sustain, normal life and normal economic activity. And I put myself in that category of people who believe that some years in the future, Russia won't even exist the way we know it now, that it'll just start to break apart.
Are we entering a new arms race?
No, I wouldn't say a new arms race, but we are entering a new era of proliferation.
And in terms of increased pressure, economic and otherwise, what does this announcement tell us about Putin and his strategy?
Well, he doesn't have one. He lacks the ability to think strategically in many ways. I mean, this Alaska summit, for example, back in August, the second half of that day's worth of activity was supposed to be American CEOs talking to Russian CEOs about projects they could do together and lifting of sanctions. Only the entire event was called off halfway before it was finished because of Putin's behavior in the first session that they had. And he just, in that one moment, on that one day, he destroyed the ability to receive any sanctions relief simply so he could sit around and spin these fantasy stories about Russian history in the 17th century. And, okay, that's not a man who thinks strategically.
Absolutely. Are you expecting anything to happen this week?
Well, no. I'm not looking for anything to happen this week. I'd love to be able to say that Putin will be gone by the end of the week.
What about Trump and Xi?
Yeah, they're already talking about, the deal that they're going to make, that there will not be the 100% sanctions against China. They'll come up with some kind of a trade deal. But I think the Chinese have to be watching what's happening right now, and they have to seriously ask how much longer, how much further in do we want to go with this, partnership without limits with Russia? How much longer do we want to stay in on this proposition?
Okay, we're going to have to pause our conversation there. Reuben F. Johnson, Director of the Asia Research Center at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for World Talks. Thank you so much for being with us, and stay tuned for much more on TVP World. Goodbye.